Hello everyone, and welcome to the third video in this little series regarding the Supernote A6 Agile note-taking device. And today we're gonna be examining how does it stack up against the reMarkable. So welcome to the reMarkable versus the Supernote A6 video. Let's get going. And here they both are. We got the reMarkable Gen 1 on the left side, and we got the Supernote A6 Agile on the right side. Now, right off the bat, obviously they are of a different format, but other than that, they have enough similarities that they really warrant comparisons between features, functionalities, and real-life performance and real-life use case scenarios to actually see which one is maybe better suited for you and which one is better at what kinds of things. Let's start with the design, overall design, and the build quality of the devices themselves. Well, right off the bat, they're really similar in the design, as in that they're representing this kind of minimalistic white look where you have a screen and a outline around it and flat edges, flat back, and nicely rounded edges. That being said, they are very similar in quality. However, the design itself, I can't really make up my mind. I really love the back, for example, of the reMarkable with the aluminum and the little rubber feet here for anti-sliding, which is extremely useful. But on the other hand, the quality of the plastic, subtle differences in shades of gray that are used on the back, and a subtle note logo here. It's just really beautiful. There's nothing to fault on either one of them, and I believe that as far as the design goes, it's just a matter of a personal preference. They're far too similar and far too well built, both of them, to just kind of make any difference. And even down to the slight bend that I was talking about in the Supernote, that this unit itself had a tiny little bend. While I don't have that issue, other users have also reported that some of their reMarkables had that kind of a bend appear. So even down to the faults and the negatives of the build quality, they're pretty much on par. The only obvious difference is the absence of buttons on Supernote and the presence of buttons here on the reMarkable. And again, I believe that's a personal preference. I like the buttons because I don't then depend on the gestures and how the gestures are working. However, on the Supernote, the gestures mostly work really well. Specifications wise, inside they're again extremely similar devices. We got a single core 1 GHz CPU here, single core 1 GHz CPU there. We got 512 megabytes of RAM in reMarkable. We got 1 GB of RAM in Supernote, so slight advantage to Supernote. Then we have 8 GB of storage on reMarkable, non-expandable, and we got 32 GB of storage on the Supernote, also non-expandable, but when you actually add those two things, slight advantage in RAM and a huge advantage, massive advantage in storage room. I think as far as hardware specifications go, regardless of the actual performance, which we'll get into a little bit later, the fact that you have 32 GB of storage on the Supernote, I think is definitely something that makes me lean towards Supernote a little bit more, because 8 GB is too little. Obviously, when comparing Supernote A6 to the reMarkable, the screen size is obviously different. So Supernote A6 is in A6 format paper, which is 7.8 inches, I think, and this is, I think, 10.3 inches. But the important thing to know is that they both have the exact same resolution, which means that the picture is much more dense on the A6, simply because you have 300 pixels per inch as opposed to 226 pixels per inch. However, if we were to compare the A5 to the reMarkable, then the screen size and the pixel density would be exactly the same. And it is fair to actually mention that because A5 and A6 have the exact same specifications internally, performance-wise. The only difference is the actual screen. And when we get to the performance comparisons, that's going to be important because it really doesn't matter how big of a screen you have if you're drawing the same amount of pixels. If you're refreshing the same amount of pixels for the CPU, RAM and everything else, it really doesn't matter. And since neither of the devices have any kind of front or backlight options, that means that the battery consumption testing again is and should be very similar between A6 and A5, but I think A5 has a bigger battery as well, so that means that the battery life would be even better on the A5. The white on both of them is extremely similar. There's a tiny smidge more green tint in the screen of the A6 than on the reMarkable, but I can't be sure if that's not effect of some of the refractions going on through the screen protector on top here. Of course, reMarkable doesn't have a screen protector like that. It's of a different type entirely. While we are on the subject of the screen protector, I really think that that's one of the big advantages of the reMarkable when compared to the Supernote. While the screen protector does work and does provide a really wonderful tactile feel, inherently this type of screen protector will always have a couple of negatives associated with it, and for me it's the two main ones. Number one is the thickness of it, so that you can actually see the physical thickness between the pen tip and where the screen is drawing your strokes. That can be a little bit distracting. That's a personal preference. The second thing that I think is a big disadvantage of these types of screen protectors is the touch sensitivity. The sensitivity of the screen on the Supernote is excellent for the pen, but as far as the touch sensitivity goes, it's hit and miss, and that's primarily because of the screen protector and its thickness. It doesn't matter what they do, the touch input is going to diffuse itself and the screen is going to have some trouble recognizing and responding precisely to the touches. So as a result, in real life use, the interactivity of the screen and your touches is going to be actually far superior on the reMarkable itself, because they are using a very different approach and of a super thin layer of the screen. So technically speaking, yes, it is also a screen protector, but a very different type and a very different approach. It's almost imperceptibly thin. It has a structure, paper-like structure to it, and most importantly, it's not ungluing. I have a bit of a problem that this is still ungluing. So I don't know how that's going to work in, I don't know, several months of use. But this device I've had for over 2 years, and I've never had anything even remotely close appear as far as the screen protector goes. One of the key differences between the screens is the actual screen technology. So these are all the specifications and technical things, but the screen itself, while they look similar and they look similar on the paper, there's a world of difference between them. Supernote is using a standard e-ink digital type of screen, while the reMarkable is using their own patented canvas technology, and it's a canvas type of a screen, and the difference is huge. This is simply the fastest e-ink digital screen in the industry currently, until Canvas 2 comes out, which is going to be even faster, as they say. But even as such, the difference is not marginal. It's a very obvious difference, and it does reflect onto the actual perception of how sluggish a device is. The screen, I think the performance, responsiveness to the touch, and especially how it's been implemented with the pen and the tactile feel and everything else, I think in every one of those categories, I would have to give the plus to the reMarkable. Then we get to the pens that you get. Now, granted, this is not the pen that you get as a default pen with Supernote. This is the metal something experience. I don't know what's it called, all metal. Metal. If I had a standard one, I would definitely compare them. I don't. But even the standard one, and even if this was compared to the premium one from the reMarkable, yes, the premium one is much better materials, much better weight and everything like that. But it costs $100. This costs $50, and this looks and feels better. I've held the other one in my hand and used it. This one feels and looks and just works kind of better at half the price. That's simply not a competition. The default one that you get with the Supernote is all metal as well. The reMarkable one is all plastic. Both have 4096 degrees of pressure sensitivity. However, there are some key differences. The Supernote pen, regardless of which one you use, internally this thing that you're actually using is exactly the same, regardless of what you get. So the fancy pen is literally just the outside appearance. I wanted to correct my observation from the in-depth video for the Ratta, because in the meantime some conflicting information came out. Some sources where I read say that this doesn't need to be replaced. Some sources say that it needs to be replaced after maybe 6 months of use. At the moment I'm not sure, so I'm gonna reach out to Ratta and ask them directly to see what they say as far as this one goes. That's basically what I know at the moment, and hopefully I'll get some more info, and then if I get some clarification on that, I'll just put up a pinned comment on this video so that people can find info easily. The reMarkable, which has replacement tips, which do provide this awesome type of writing feel, but they cost a lot, and they do get to be spent. Now, one word here, I've read, and some people and even some reviewers are guilty of this, and they kind of said like you need to replace nibs on a weekly basis. I'm sorry, that's complete nonsense. I've been using this for 2 years and I have went through 6 nibs. And I've written over 1,000 pages. Yes, the nibs get to look disgusting and flat and they are dirty and all of that kind of stuff, but you don't lose the essence of the writing feel, and they certainly don't stop working. So that sentiment that you have to replace nibs on a weekly basis is complete BS. I'm sorry, that I gotta call it the way I see it. It's because that's not true. However, if you wanted to always keep the optimum level of writing experience, then I would guess that you would probably, depending on your writing needs and how hard you press, you would probably start changing your nibs on a maybe bi-monthly or tri-monthly basis. But even so, we're talking about 4 to 6 nibs a year. And that would be, I think, a realistic average. That is an expense because the nibs can only be bought from their website, and the shipping costs and everything else is just pretty much huge, and amounts to nibs costing quite a lot. So that is definitely a consideration, but saying that you need to change them weekly, that's just malicious. Neither of the pens have the erasers on the back, and the only difference is that the default pen with the Supernote has a clicker on the back so that you can toggle the ballpoint in and out, which is also nice, and you can annoy your colleagues by doing that click 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 click. Even though the build quality and the nibs taken into consideration, the reMarkable pen has something that no other writing device has. Not only is it pressure sensitive, it is also angle sensitive, and that is just a gigantic difference in overall way you can use these things. So yes, there are some limitations to the pen itself, but when it comes down to the actual functionality, I would have to give the advantage to the pure functionality wise to the reMarkable pen. However, if you don't care about the angle sensitivity and the drawing shading type of things, then the clear advantage in every single aspect goes to the Supernote pen, because it just feels and looks and is just a really far superior experience than either of the reMarkable pens that are on offer today. Can you swap the pens? Well, no. Heart of Metal does not work on the reMarkable at all. However, surprisingly, the reMarkable pen works perfectly fine on the Ratta. So pressure sensitivity and everything, of course not the tilt, but the pressure sensitivity works and it actually feels quite nice. You can swap that if you wanted to, but then again, one of the things that's a really big plus is this pen here. Also, I don't know how smart it would be to use a hard plastic ballpoint on the plastic surface of the screen on the reMarkable. Might not be a great idea to actually scratch it all up, but this actually works. As far as the battery life goes, reMarkable has a 3000 milliamp battery. This one has 2150, I think. So much lower battery, but technically speaking, it's drawing the same amount of pixels and everything. So it should be a similar type of thing, but in reality, there is no contest. Supernote has proper battery management, and there's no leaking of energy when it is off. When it's off, it's off. You don't get to turn off the device, leave it for a day, and then turn it back on, and you see, I don't know, even a several percent go off. That is certainly the case with reMarkable. The software is still struggling with turning the device completely off, and it's never completely off. The battery capacity is always leaking somewhere, so no matter what you do, you will always get better battery life out of a Supernote, and I can only imagine that Supernote A5 with a bigger battery would even have a much bigger advantage over the reMarkable. So as far as the battery life goes, Supernote is the clear winner here. Now let's talk about the folios that are available for either of the devices. For the reMarkable Gen 1, you have these fancy materials, but the structure and the construction and the design is pretty much exactly the same. And while the quality on both is absolutely outstanding, there is nothing to fault on either one of those. There is one clear advantage for the Supernote, and that is the simple fact that you can charge your device while it is protected in its cover. That is not the case with the reMarkable as a standard. You cannot charge the reMarkable while protected in a folio. You can charge your Supernote while protected in its folio. So for me, advantage goes to Supernote here as well. I absolutely adore this function, the slider on the side on the Supernote. I think it's extremely useful. And even though there's like an absence of a dedicated home screen, you almost get the same type of functionality here on the reMarkable as well. Because if you switch, for example, from notebooks and I switch to notes, I get the very similar type of experience on both devices. So for example, I go to documents here, I go to PDFs here, I get the same type of look and overall feel. So I think that the user experience is extremely similar and it's very approachable on either of the devices. But I have to say that a slight advantage for the overall usage on everyday use experience, this is very satisfactory and it's very handy. And I really love the fact that you can actually swipe up and refresh the screen. That's something that you can't do manually on the reMarkable, for example. In order to compare in a fair manner both devices, I'm going to be using the exact same documents so that we can see how it works. So let's first open up a PDF here, which is a fairly standard type of a PDF. And yeah, we can let's even try and measure out the opening speed of the both devices. So let's try and open them at the same time. 3, 2, 1. Fairly similar, except I think Supernote was able to maybe load it up fully a little bit faster because it was all settled down and reMarkable was still drawing things. Now, right off the bat, I have to say that we can definitely see a difference in the quality of the display itself, and not so surprisingly, it's actually the Supernote, simply because of that pixel density. And I don't know how much the camera can pick it up. I hope this translates well into the final edit, but you should be able to see a very clear difference in the interpretation of the images here. All right, image quality aside, navigation can be done in pretty much the same manner because both are supporting the gestures. So I'm just gonna use them like that so that it's actually more fair. And you can see that they have equal hit and miss. So I can equally have hit and miss on both devices. That being said, it seems that the refresh rate is again the performance, the raw performance of reMarkable canvas display is superior to the standard e-ink display on the Supernote. And those 300 pixels per inch on the Supernote versus the 226 pixels per inch on the reMarkable and Supernote A5 as well, actually translates into sharper, more dense and more rich type of a text and reading experience. Of course, it is smaller, much smaller on the smaller display. Perceived sharpness and clarity is actually better on the Supernote when compared to the reMarkable. As far as the reflowing and options for the PDF and document themselves, we have fairly similar things, so we can adjust our view in both of them. The big difference is that the actual adjustment is far more effective on the reMarkable. I can do this with my fingers without any problem, while on the Supernote, that's just simply not the case, as you probably have seen if you've watched my in-depth review and guide for the Supernote. This is at best, in the case possible to do maybe, if you're lucky, with the Stylus, dragging the corners, but even then, it's a matter of luck, while on a reMarkable, it's a way more pleasant experience. One key difference here is that the reMarkable does not let you change the aspect ratio of the actual formatting. The Supernote does, but I don't see the point, because once you do change the aspect ratio, the text will simply be cut off. So I don't see what you possibly could gain with this type of thing, except maybe if you wanted to cut out a piece of document and then write some notes. Okay, that's like really a stretch. reMarkable compensates for that functionality by including the zoom option. Now, granted, the zoom is not the most happiest implementation ever, but it works. So basically, as you probably know, it's you can choose between the degree of zoom, so let's say 500%, and then I can zoom in and see a lot more details than I could, and then on the general overview of the page here, I can just tap and zoom on a different feature altogether. The zoom functionality on the reMarkable works really well and is very welcome, and it's something that would be really nice to see on the Supernote platform as well. Other than that, all other types of functionalities are fairly similar, with the main difference that on reMarkable we can actually do a search for the words. So if I go and search for delay, for example, he will search and he will give me results of delay, while on the Supernote, please keep in mind, this is the exact same document, I don't have a word search. I can only search by asterisk, and that's a really big disappointment as far as reader capabilities go. Yes, you can do word search on an EPUB, but on PDFs I don't see a reason why not. Let's get into a document that I know that has a table of contents, and for example here, that image just looks so nicer. Let's not get distracted. So if I go into a table of contents on this guy, he has it and sees it, and reMarkable sees the table of contents as well. However, I have to say that the formatting, while not the best, definitely not the best, simply because of the size and the density, how the spacing is sorted out here, is actually quite a bit better. Supernote redeems itself by having an option to actually bookmark a page, which is amazingly something that you still can't do on the reMarkable. Like, I find that remarkable. It's mind-blowing that 2 years into the existence of this ecosystem, reMarkable's reader doesn't have the ability to bookmark a page. That's just fascinating for me. Other functionalities that we have for example, of exporting, Supernote has an option to create a screenshot and it can export the document directly. On the reMarkable, we have a live view, which is something that Supernote doesn't have, a huge plus for the reMarkable. As far as export options go, the Supernote has an additional option that reMarkable doesn't have, which is to create a screenshot, and it automatically saves it into screenshots folder, and it can also export the document and save it into the export documents. reMarkable has the option of sending by email, but don't let that deceive you. You can export a single page as a PNG, technically speaking, that's a screenshot, and you can export the document as a PDF, and you can change the scope of the document. You can export just a single page as a PDF or a page range if you want. So definitely similar functionality is here. As far as the reader capabilities go, this is where the capabilities of reMarkable stop and Supernote keeps going forward, because you can mark the pages using the star symbol, and most importantly, you can annotate. This is something that's really important. You can easily annotate and you can add notes to your annotations, and then you can search those annotations in the summary and all of these kinds of things. And you know, it's just Note going with the functionalities up and up, and leaving the reMarkable reader functionalities, I am afraid to say, a little bit in the past. So some of the functionalities, like raw functionalities, are maybe better implemented in the reMarkable itself. However, it is lacking some of the basic functionalities that a modern reader definitely should have, and bookmarks and annotations are the most basic ones that a modern reader must have. reMarkable doesn't have that. Supernote has those, and despite all of the other problems that I mentioned, simply because it has much more usable functionalities, my advantage as far as reader experience goes would have to go to the Supernote. When comparing note-taking between the two devices, it's a mixed bag again, simply because they have different functionalities and yeah, different advantages and disadvantages. If we're looking at just the basic tool sets, reMarkable takes the cake on that without any competition at all. The overall writing experience, how it feels, for me, it's a very clear advantage that goes to the reMarkable. That's not to say that it's bad in any way on the Supernote. On the contrary, it's extremely good, really good. But if I'm comparing the two, for me personally, reMarkable is just a little bit better. The things that make it a little bit better for me is the responsiveness of the screen and the tactile feel and the sound of the surface while you're writing. That's maybe a personal preference, definitely personal preference for the sound and stuff, but the responsiveness is not a personal preference. This is simply something that's factually better and more dominant on the reMarkable. However, the difference is not so huge that it's night and day like in Note 2, for example, because Supernote is faster than Note 2. Get that. So that's something to also keep in mind. As far as the functionalities go, well, brushes, definitely clear advantage on the reMarkable, because the range of brushes, as coupled with the sensitivity to the angle of the brush as well, or the pen as well, it's just a huge advantage. Then we have the thickness and the colors. Well, you get a little bit more flexibility on the Supernote here. However, it doesn't really mean much, because the pressure sensitivity and the variety of the brushes that you have on reMarkable, you get to have the same pretty much results as far as the thickness of the stroke goes. As far as the colors go, however, they both have a little bit of a difference. On reMarkable, you can paint with the white color. On Supernote, you can't, but you do have an extra light shade of gray. However, there is a very big difference between the two as far as one main thing goes. So let's choose a marker, a black colored marker of thickness of a thick color marker on reMarkable. And now I change the color to gray. I can paint gray on top of the black, and I can paint white on top of the black. This is not the case with the Supernote. If I paint black, I cannot paint any shade of gray on top of it, simply because, as I shown before, it has this internal way of dealing with colors. Lighter color is the deepest one in the background, and darker the shade, more to the front it goes. And that can be definitely a disadvantage. A couple of more advantages that the reMarkable has, well, the selection itself, for example. On both devices, the selection tool works a little bit differently, and there's far more functionality that you can see on the reMarkable itself. So on Supernote, all I can do is select it and move it. There are no handles for scaling, and I can copy it by using the plus button, so I can just duplicate it and move it around on the same page. I can't do anything with it anywhere else. With the reMarkable, yes, you can move it, and you can see that the responsiveness is a lot better. I can rotate, I can scale. Ooh, I'm not left-handed, so bear with me. So I can scale, only uniform scaling, but most importantly, you can do something which is kind of cool, which is negative scale, and negative scale equals mirroring. So that's kind of cool. You can delete it, you can copy it, and the copying is basically something that you can use. You can paste from update 2.1. You can paste this selection in other documents finally elsewhere. So both performance and functionality, absolutely clear winner would be the reMarkable as far as the selection tool itself goes. And it doesn't stop there. Then we have the zoom tool, which the Supernote doesn't have. And we also have the live view, which the Supernote doesn't have. We have the conversion to text and send if you have the written text, and more on that a little bit in the other section with text recognition section. But the absolute biggest advantage are the layers, and here, you know, we have a completely opposite situation. Now we're talking about features where Supernote, as far as the note-taking and writing experience goes, is just going woo, and leaving Supernote and Note 2 and pretty much any other competitor way, way back. And yeah, the focus of reMarkable is that it's a note-taking and drawing device, and it shows. It's most polished, most dominant. So it's a valiant effort of the Supernote, and don't take me wrong, what you have here is, what you have from the functionalities here is perfectly adequate and really, really good. And I don't think that you're gonna miss out on too much unless you're trying to draw or something like that. So for daily use, note-taking and all that kind of stuff, absolutely it works. However, if we're comparing the two, yeah, they can be compared up to a point, but after a certain point, the features and the functionalities and the way things work on reMarkable, it's simply far, far superior to Supernote and any other device currently on the market. And to summarize, as far as the writing experience itself goes, again, I have to give the cake to the reMarkable, because everything combined, the responsiveness of the screen, the tip itself, changeable or not, I'm just talking about the experience itself, it feels better, it's more responsive, and as a result, weirdly, my handwriting is less messy on the reMarkable than on the Supernote or any other device. I don't know exactly why that is, but it definitely is the case. Definitely a better writing experience on the reMarkable. However, Supernote is not too far behind. It's like a close second. But for me, the reMarkable, as far as the writing experience goes, is number one. And then Supernote comes in as a very, very respectable close second place. Both devices have text recognition capability on paper, however it works very, very differently between the two. On the reMarkable, it's a built-in functionality of a notebook, so you can just convert anything that you wrote at any given point, and you can choose to try and convert it and see what result you get. That's not the case on the Supernote. In the Supernote, you have to get into a dedicated mode, which is a dedicated smart document grid type of a look, where you have a box for each character, so you can't really connect right, and it's a little bit clunky and it's like an event, while on the reMarkable it's just an integral part of normal functionality. Even if that was not such a big problem, which for me it definitely is, the biggest, absolutely biggest problem is the actual functionality of the conversion. So let's see what we get. I have the same type of thing. This is my example number 3, my point number 1, my point number 2, dashes work 2. Okay, I forgot to add that, but I can also get quite messy and tiny. So I have the same types of things added on both of them. And let's convert both and see what we actually get. So on the reMarkable, this is my example number 3, my point 1, or my point I, so it didn't recognize 1, my point 2, dashes work 2. I can also get quite messy, so it figured it has one mistake on the O, and tiny it recognized perfectly. So we have 2 mistakes on the reMarkable. The Supernote, let's see, this, it doesn't recognize capitalization, so everything is small to begin with, which is already a problem. So this is not capitalized, is mv, it's not my, so doesn't recognize it. Example, correct. Number S, not 3, so that's another mistake. The dots are not recognized. The dot is recognized as an A, so that's another mistake. Mv, it doesn't recognize my. Point 1 is recognized as T. The dot is now recognized as, I guess, a degree symbol. Mv, again, point 2 is not recognized, it's Z, so it's not recognizing numbers at all. Then again, here it's something weird. I can get, that's correct, but it's not capitalized. Or is it? No, it is capitalized, sorry. I can get gnit, so quite is gnit. That would be 2 mistakes there, so we're now at 12. Mesv, another dash doesn't work, and tynv. So we got 15 mistakes on Supernote, and we got 2 mistakes on the reMarkable. Conclusion is yours. Now let's talk a little bit about the real-time performance and the overall impression and how it feels to use either of the devices in reality. Overall, general impression is absolutely that the reMarkable is a faster device, which shouldn't be, because this guy has twice the amount of RAM and they have the same CPUs, and they're both running on custom Linux OSs. So in theory, the Supernote should have been a bit quicker, but it's not. There's like a bunch of optimizations that reMarkable has done over the years, showing you content as quickly as possible, and then it fills in all the details. That's not something that's happening on Supernote. Supernote waits to load everything and then displays. The result is that you get quicker all over the place using the reMarkable. The responsiveness of the screen on the reMarkable is also faster, and that also contributes to the overall impression that the overall workflow and impression of the speed of the device is better on the reMarkable. Let's test the boot up speed of both devices. So they're both totally turned off, and I'm just gonna get ready here to press the power button. So let's see, 3, 2, 1, go. Okay. And reMarkable is blinking, getting there. This should be close, actually. Okay, reMarkable's on. And the Wi-Fi is established and really cool. So very, very close, with one advantage going for me to Supernote because of the OS structure. When you power it on, you continue where you left off. On the reMarkable and many other devices, now I have to navigate back and get to the document where I was. This guy actually not only booted up, but actually loaded up the mode that I was in, the document I was in, and the page where I was at. Very, very cool. Very close performance, but I would give the advantage to the Supernote here because it simply is a little bit more streamlined. You can continue doing what you were doing a little bit faster on the Supernote. Very, very cool. Let's check out the performance when dealing with large documents. So I'm gonna load up the same large PDF on both devices. The document hasn't been loaded up beforehand, and this is the first time either of the devices loading the document from the cold boot up or start. The document itself is a user manual for a car, and it's 646 pages long, combined with large images and all that kind of stuff. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay. Of course, reMarkable is forced to load the image because it was on the starting image. I noticed now that they are not the same document, but they're very similar. This one's 570 pages, this one is 646, but they load and navigate perfectly normally. Neither of the devices can actually turn the document around, so if it's landscape, it's landscape, if it's portrait, it's portrait. So no differences there, and I can't really see any type of difference here in the navigation performance at all. Both are performing equally good with a small document or a large document. I don't think you'll find any difference in performance whatsoever. Now let's test out a really large notebook. I'm loading up a 200-page notebook on reMarkable and a 100-page notebook on the Supernote. So 3, 2, 1, go. And fairly similar. The navigation, you won't be able to actually see it because I just copy pasted the same page over and over, but if you wanna see it, it's flipping the pages here. You can see the numbers. I am using normal type of writing situations. I'm not using multiple layers on the reMarkable or anything like that. I don't see any performance difference in handling large or small notebooks on either of the devices, which is great. The clear advantage of the Supernote is the amount of RAM. So theoretically speaking, it should work and it should handle large images and large documents better. So let's test the dreaded Hercules DJ controller guide again with that horrible image and see what happens. So 3, 2, 1, go. I know this one is low resolution, but I can navigate. If I wanted to, I'm just going to keep it for the test purposes here, but if I wanted to, I could just swipe and I could already read through my document, which is definitely not the case on the Supernote. And even the full resolution has already been now loaded in reMarkable. Supernote is still loading the same image. So this is no longer preview, and now it's loaded. Because of the contrast values and the pixel density, the image itself, the way it looks on the Supernote is actually a lot better than on the reMarkable itself. But that doesn't matter because I'm not gonna use an e-ink device to view images in super high detail. I'm gonna use it to read through my documents. And after that, both perform in a very similar fashion. Because of these optimizations, you see how reMarkable is drawing elements differently and Supernote waits until the entire page is loaded and then draws it. This simply gives you an impression of, and it definitely is perceptibly faster. So definitely a better way of handling images. reMarkable doesn't retain it in RAM. It needs to load the full image again, but because Supernote has a full gigabyte of RAM, it is keeping the original image. So once it's loaded it's there for the duration of your session with that document. reMarkable will keep reloading it every time you go back, but because of the preview function, it really doesn't matter. So performance-wise, writing, document reading, demanding document reading, loading and navigating all over the place, and interacting with the device in all 4 categories, reMarkable is actually better than the Supernote. That being said, Supernote is extremely good as well, but if I were to pick one weak point of the Supernote, that would be precisely this. It's constantly a little bit laggy, the touch is a little bit imprecise, maybe the calibration of a touch would help to calibrate the screen a little bit better, but currently we don't have that option. So as a result, the keyboard responsiveness is super sluggish, barely usable, which is not the case on reMarkable. The touches are not really registering all the time, and the overall navigation is a lot more sluggish on the Supernote when compared to the reMarkable. And a clear winner here again would be the reMarkable. Then we get to the usability of these devices and connectivity with the outside world. Both have a dedicated type of a hub. On a Supernote, that's the cloud online. On the reMarkable, that's the cloud online, the desktop app, and the mobile app as well. One of the things that's worth mentioning is that the underlying server service that you have on either of the devices is actually quite different. While the user interface on the server, on your account for the cloud Supernote system is far more capable than the reMarkable. One really big difference is the synchronization speed. Whether you upload to the server or you synchronize with the server, the reMarkable does it really fast, and this guy is really slow. For example, getting a 10 megabyte document synchronized with the Supernote took me half an hour. What happens if there's like a 100 megabyte document? There's a bit of a discrepancy here because it has 32 gigabytes of storage and you get 32 gigabytes of cloud space. I can't imagine how long and how much time it would take to actually synchronize 1 gigabyte worth of files. I don't know. The only thing that I do know is that it's obviously way more slow than the reMarkable server synchronization settings. Hopefully that will be improved soon, but at the moment it is something that I think needs to be mentioned. However, clear advantage comes to the Supernote once you plug in that USB cable. So this one you can and you probably should use the account, but you don't have to. You can always simply plug it in and it will work out of the box. Not the case with the reMarkable. With the reMarkable, you have to plug it in, you have to type in an IP address in your browser, and then you're greeted with a HTML site that that can only barely do two things, which is upload and download. You can't even reorder things, you can't do anything there. It's just terrible. So as far as communication with the outside world and flexibility in real life world, absolutely the advantage goes to the Supernote, and that's something that reMarkable should definitely, I hope they improve that for Gen 2, because it's absolutely needed. I mean, you have to be able to simply plug in the device and see it as a drive with the correct directory structure. There's no reason to not have that in today's day and age. The other thing, again, a place where Supernote clearly wins, is loading in your custom graphics for your screensavers and especially for your templates for your notebooks. You've seen how easily that is done in the in-depth review and guide of the Supernote. As easy as plug in the USB, drag and drop the files into correct folders, unplug it, and that's it, you're done, you just choose it. Absolutely not the case on the reMarkable. The reMarkable makes it a freaking science project, which doesn't work half the time. So yeah, as far as customizability, user-friendliness, and openness towards the outside world, absolutely clear advantage is for the Supernote, and that's a big plus. That's a very big plus. That one actually weighs in heavily in daily use. It's not something to be just smirked at, because it is a thing that you will be constantly using, and it is a constant tripping point for use with the reMarkable. For 2 years in now, we are constantly forced to trip around the fact that you can't simply add files, you can't simply add a template, you can't simply add custom graphics. It's always an adventure of some sort, and there's absolutely no excuse for that, because obviously Supernote proves it, it can be done in a way more efficient and functional way. So clear winner here is the Supernote. Alright, so now I need to get to a meaningful conclusion after this whole video and comparison of these two excellent products. and I have to say that I had a really difficult time. So here it goes. There are definitely areas where the reMarkable shines and comes through on top when compared to the Supernote A6. Most notable one is the overall responsiveness of the whole system. Touch responsiveness, biggest of all, is the note-taking experience. The amount of brushes, the layers, and all of these kinds of things. You can actually see that reMarkable is a platform that had 2 years to be developed and basically focused into a really powerful note-taking force to be reckoned with. At the moment, just purely as a note-taking device, reMarkable is slightly better, but not by a huge margin. So all of these differences, they are definitely present. And let's say if reMarkable is right here, then the Supernote is, even though not there, but it is just a little bit lower. And that's not a small feat, because very few devices are able to reach and measure up to the reMarkable's note-taking and writing experience. But Supernote does. Not as good, but right there. A very close and super respectable second place. However, reMarkable has a bit of uneven and questionable track record when it comes to update frequency, and more importantly, the willingness to listen to your customer base and to actually reach out and take the input from your customers, and that's a problem. Ratta is taking a different approach, and they are very forthcoming. They've already commented on my in-depth video as a Supernote channel, where they're saying that the upcoming updates will introduce layers to the note-taking, which is a huge thing, and there's other stuff also in plan that's coming in. And their track record is that they're extremely keen on listening to their customer base. They understand why that's important, and they're working on it diligently. As a result, you have a platform that's evolving and being improved on a monthly basis, and that's a huge thing. So for me, I have to say reMarkable is a better note-taking device at the moment. I don't know where Ratta will be in 3 months' time, and by the time when reMarkable Gen 2 comes out, unless that one offers some significant improvements functionality-wise for the note-taking, speed or no speed, fancy design or no fancy design, it's gonna have a competitor in the Supernote platform, absolutely. With only a handful of improvements, Supernote's position, where it's right here, it can be right at the edge of the reMarkable. It will never be as fast and as responsive as the reMarkable is, simply because of the canvas display. I'm willing to trade a little bit of a speed deficit for all of the other benefits that Supernote has over reMarkable, and those are plentiful. First of all, as a reader experience, ability to bookmark, ability to add annotations, and ability to add asterisks and actually search all of these kinds of things make it a really properly usable device. Since I've had Ratta, when I read something and I'm going through a textbook or a user manual or something, I reach out for Ratta. I'm not even considering taking reMarkable anymore, simply because it's not as usable. It doesn't have the functionalities. Yes, the page turning is more responsive. Yes, it's a bigger display and all of these kinds of things, but none of that actually matters because the usability of Supernote A6 for me is far better. Another element that actually plays right in hand why I gravitate towards Supernote is the presence of the email. It's incredibly useful not to have any notifications or distractions, but when I wanna, or I'm in the middle of reading something, annotating and I simply take a screenshot and then email that to someone. Yes, you can do that on reMarkable too, but when I'm checking email, I can see the response. So I can send the stuff, I can get the response, I can write stuff back, I don't have to leave the platform at all. Again, as a usability feature, a huge plus for the Supernote. There are of course a couple of functionalities that reMarkable has and the Supernote doesn't. Most notable ones would be the zoom and the search by word functions. However, this is a continually updated platform, as I mentioned before, and these are just software things, which can probably and hopefully easily be implemented. And guess what? Then any advantage of reMarkable as a reader device are gone. That should be another very worrying and important point for the reMarkable development team. The biggest negatives that Supernote has when compared to the reMarkable can be boiled down to these 3 points. First one is, of course, text recognition, but thankfully that's a software thing and can be updated. The second one is the keyboard itself. That one, with some improvements for keyboard calibration and maybe screen touch calibration, can definitely be improved upon from where it is currently. And the final one is the overall touch responsiveness. Now that one, I don't know if it will ever be able to be as good and as pleasant as the reMarkable is, simply because of the canvas display and the screen protector technology. However, there's plenty of room for improvement, and they are continually improving it. Another important point that I noticed while using the Supernote and spending time with it is that I want to use it. It makes me happy. It makes me happy to relax on a couch, reading a textbook, marking it, and doing all of these things. Maybe it's just the format, maybe it's everything together, but as an overall experience, it's extremely pleasant and inviting to use. Not to say that reMarkable isn't, but this one is a bit more inviting and a little bit more pleasant to use. So maybe that's something that's also worth considering. If I take into consideration that the Supernote is an actively evolving platform that has huge potential for improvements, and if it manages to actually add a couple of these things that I mentioned that are like a discrepancy when compared to reMarkable, I think that then my recommendation would surprisingly actually go to the Supernote. We're not there yet. Right now it's completely equal. And that's why I had so much difficulty trying to reach a conclusion, because at some things reMarkable is amazing and at the other things Supernote is amazing too. And then they just kept clashing and battling and butting heads constantly, and that was a very, very interesting thing to actually experience. What would be the final conclusion for me? Well, I'll just tell you what my daily routine is now. When I'm working on development of a project or a consultation and I'm taking notes, reMarkable is the one that will be with me, simply because of the note-taking advantages and or because of the text recognition. However, everything else is now slowly but surely becoming the Supernote. And it's becoming my go-to device because of the format, because of the battery life, because of all of these things that I already mentioned. If the text recognition is improved and a little bit of responsiveness to the touch and all of that kind of stuff is improved, I honestly could see myself switching to the Supernote completely, which is a big surprise for me. I did not expect that. However, that's all hypothetical. At the moment, I think they're kind of equal, and I find perfect use for them for either of the situations that I'm in. reMarkable for note-taking priorities, Supernote for everything else. However, as an overall device, I have to give the cake to the Supernote. It's just a more usable platform on a daily basis, and that should be a worry for the reMarkable unless they are planning some huge improvements for the Gen 2, not hardware-wise, but software-wise and functionality-wise. Remains to be seen, and it also remains to be seen where the Supernote platform will be in 3 months' time when reMarkable Gen 2 is scheduled to hit the markets. So I think we're looking at a couple of really exciting months during the summer to see what's what and what's going to be happening in the world of e-readers and note-taking devices. So that's pretty cool. Alright, that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope that you found useful information here that can help you reach potentially an informed decision. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. Stay safe and stay healthy, and see you in another video. Bye!